Hi, 7th grade. This video is a reteach on narrative writing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the sources that you use for your narrative for the intro, and then I'm going to go over a number of student sample works. And we're going to go over some of the things that we saw that were good and some of the things we can work on. The first thing I'm going to go over is the sources because I feel like the students that didn't do a solid job in the narrative was because they didn't understand the sources. When you read the sources are going to guide your story. Like your story is based on the events that you see in the sources. So let's look at the first source. I'm just warning you, this video is going to be pretty long because there's 3 sources that I'm going to go over, and then there's like 5 or 6 different stories that I'm going to look at. The first source is called The War. Source 2 is, or this is just it just goes over the different sources. So source 1 is called The War, source 2 is called Camp Harmony, and source 3 is Instructions to a Person with Japanese Ancestry. So the first source is going to be this one called The War, Japanese Americans internment camp. Internment, The War by Ken Burnsfield. When you read this, you should be extracting or taking out information that you will use in your story, like events that happen in or evidence from the sources should appear in your story. The first one says, and when we went to the internment camp. Now, some of you guys were confused by an internment camp. An internment camp is not something positive; it's something negative, like a prison. And you'll be able to figure that out based on what the people say that go to the camps. And when we went to the internment camp, guard towers, so it sounds like a prison, double security fence, and all that. I really wonder what was going to happen to us. You know, that is just the beginning, and they may very well send us back to Japan. So this story is an American. This person is this. The source is an American person, it's a Japanese American person, and they live in the United States. And he's a or she, they're afraid they may be sent back to Japan. And that to me was horrible. I, in my heart, knew my loyalty belonged to America. I went to school, pledged allegiance every morning in grammar school. And for me to think that I may be sent to Japan was horrendous. And so that was sort of a nightmare. Susumu Sotawa, The War. And then here they gave you, this is the source that you should have used to really get background information, right? I think this is a secondary source. So this source gave you all the background information that you needed to write your story. On February 19, 1942, so this gives you a sense of time. 1942, so let's count. 42, 52, 62, 72, 82, 92, 02, 12, 22. So we're in the year 2023, so that was 80 years ago. That was 80 years ago. On February 19, 1942, just 2 months after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, so it looks like the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941. It looks like it might have been like December 1941, based on that. So 1941. So on February 19th, 1942, just 2 months after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt, the President of the United States, signed Executive Order 9066. Its tone was carefully neutral. It authorized the War Department to design military areas. So this is what's going to be the camps that excluded people considered to be dangerous to the United States. But the order actually had a specific target. 110,000 Japanese Americans living along the West Coast. So these Japanese Americans are seen as people that can be dangerous to the United States. Okay? While approximately 10,000 Japanese Americans were able to relocate to other parts of the country, the remainder, so some of them were able to leave the West Coast. The remainder was sent to hastily, quickly constructed camps called war relocation centers. So that's what these camps were called. And they were sent there because the United States saw them as maybe as a threat. Because Japan, the country of Japan, had attacked the United States. And here were these Japanese people living in the West Coast that the United States saw as a threat. So they gathered them up and put them in these camps. So your story should have been about that. Your story should have been about maybe the struggle of these Japanese Americans going to the camp. In a remote or isolated portion of the nation's interior, many will spend the next 3 years living under armed guard behind barbed wire. So it's a prison. It's pretty much a prison. Thousands of Germans and Italian aliens were also locked up, but millions of Germans and Italian Americans citizens remained free to live their lives as they always had. Only Japan Americans on the West Coast were singled out. Now, this one might be a little difficult for some of you because you need to kind of already know that Germany and Italy were also going to war against the United States. We were at war against the Germans and the Italians. But the United States did not put the Germans and Italians in camps. Some of them were put in camps, but it was mostly the Japanese. So that's what the source is getting at. It was mostly targeting Japanese Americans. While they represented a tiny portion of the population, Japanese Americans on the West Coast had long been special targets for white hostility. So, although there was a small population of Japanese Americans in the West Coast, a lot of times they had been harassed by white people. Laws and customs shut out Japanese Americans from full participation in economic and civic life for decades. So the Japanese had suffered discrimination for a very long time. Japanese immigrants, known as ise. So Japanese immigrants are people that are born in Japan and they migrate, they come to the United States. They could not own land or become natural citizens. They couldn't become citizens. But the American-born descendants of Japanese immigrants, called Nisei, were citizens by birthright. It may have become successful in business and farming. So if you were a person that was born in Japan, you couldn't become a citizen and you couldn't own land. Now, if your parents were born in Japan, but you were born in the United States, then you were a U.S. citizen and you can become a successful business and farming. Pearl Harbor. So Pearl Harbor was the attack that the Japanese did, that the country of Japan did against the United States in Pearl Harbor. It was an attack, and that's what led the United States to get into the war. Pearl Harbor gave whites a chance to renew their hostilities towards Japanese neighbors. It also offered white growers and businesses interests an opportunity to agitate anew for the elimination of unwanted competitors. So there was a lot of Japanese Americans in the West Coast that were farmers. And when Japan attacked the United States, a lot of white farmers said, look, 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 they are the problem. So they wanted to get rid of them because now they wouldn't be competing against the white farmers. All across the West Coast, relocation notices were posted on April, so these notices were sent out to Japanese Americans. All people of Japanese ancestry, anyone that's Japanese, including those with only 1/16th blood, were given as little as 1 week to settle their affairs. They were given very little time to sell their farms, to sell their stuff, to take care of whatever they needed to do. Farmers desperately looked to neighbors to help care for their crops. But along with many other Japanese American business owners, they face financial ruin, right? You're being sent to prison. What do you do with your farm? What do you do with everything that you own? Families lost everything, forced to sell off homes, shops, furnishings, even the clothes they couldn't carry with them, to buyers happy to snap them up for next to nothing. So the Japanese Americans were almost forced to sell everything. And there was these people that were buying them really cheaply because Japanese Americans had to leave. They couldn't negotiate. In 1944, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the exclusion, removal, and detention, arguing that it's permissible to curtail the civil rights of racial groups when there is a pressing public necessity. So the U.S. Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, said yes, it's fine, because most likely because of the war. Nearly 45 years later, though, the effort of leaders of the Japanese American community, Congress passed so 40 years later, Congress passed this act, which acknowledged that the internment camps had been a grave injustice, really bad, and mandated Congress to pay each victim $20,000 in reparations. So 40 years after, Congress passed this act that gave some money back to the Japanese, but it wouldn't be enough, right? Because we know obviously that they lost 2 years of their life and a lot of their stuff. Now, so this kind of gave you what's happening in the story, or this gives you the context of what your story is going to be kind of about. This is background information. Source two, Camp Harmony by Nise daughter. So Nise, so this person is Japanese American. She was born in the United States. I think, yeah, Nise right here. And she said, and it says the article gives a first person account. So this article is a first person perspective of a person that went to a camp. So it gives you an idea of what it was to live in the camp. When our bus turned the corner and we no longer had to smile and wave, we settled back gravely in our seats. They're in a bus. We sped out of the city southward along the beautiful stretches of farmland with dark, newly churned soil. We tried to sleep to escape from the restless anxiety which kept bobbing up to the surface of our minds. I awoke with a start when the bus filled with exciting buzzing. A small group of straw-hatted Japanese farmers stood by the highway waving at us. I felt a sudden warmth towards them, then a twinge of pity. They'll be joining us soon because they're on the way. They're leaving the city, and they see some Japanese farmers on the way, and she knows that those farmers are also going to be put in buses. About noon, we crept into a small town. Someone said, like looks like Polyop." All right. We noticed at the we noticed at the left of us an entire block filled with neat rows of low shacks. So this is what they see, resembling chicken houses. You see chicken coops. Someone commented on with an awe, "Just look at those chicken houses." Slowly the bus made a left turn, drove through a wire fence gate, and to our dismay, we were inside the oversized chicken farm. So this is what they're going to be living in. The bus driver opened the door and the guard stepped out. "Okay, folks, all of the Yokohama poly up." We stumbled out, stunned, dragging our bundles after us. It must have rained hard the night before in Polyup, for we sank ankle deep into the gray, glutinous mud. The receptionist, a white man, instructed us courteously. "Now, folks, please stay together as a family unit and line up. You be assigned your apartments." So again, these are not like fancy apartments. These are like shacks. We were standing in Area A, the mammoth or large parking lot of the state fairgrounds. There were three other separate areas, B, C, and D, all built in the fairgrounds. The camp of Army barracks was hopefully called Camp Harmony. We were assigned to apartment 2-1, I think it's 2A1 or 2-1A, right across from the bachelor quarters. The apartments, they call them apartments, they're like shacks. The apartments resembled elongated or long stables, about 2 blocks long. Stables are those things that where horses live. Our home was one room, about 18 by 20 feet, the size of a living room. There was one small window in the wall, opposite the one door. It was bare except for a small wood-burning stove crouching in the center. The floor consisted of 2x4s laid directly on the earth, and dandelions were already pushing up through the cracks. So you get an idea of what this looks like. It's like wood on the ground, but there's exposed areas where flowers can come up, like weeds. Mother and father wandered out to see what the other folks were doing. Mother returned shortly. Her face lit up in an ecstatic smile. "We're in luck. The latrine or the bathroom is right nearby. We won't have to walk blocks." Father came back, bent doubled like a woodcutter in a fairy tale, with stacks of scrap lumber over his shoulder. His pockets bulged with nails, so he looks like he got some nails. Father exclaimed, "There was a pile of wood left by the carpenters and hundreds of nails scattered loose. Everybody was picking them up and I hustled right in with them. Now maybe we can live in style with tables and chairs." So he's kind of being sarcastic because he's going to have to make it himself. The block leader knocked on our door and announced lunchtime. He instructed us to take our meal at the nearest mess hall. That's where they eat. As I untied my sea bag to get up my pie plate, tin cup, spoon, and fork, I realized I was hungry. At the mess hall, at the mess hall, we found a long line of people, so it's a lot of people, right? So it's something you could be using for your evidence. A light drizzle began to fall, coating bare black heads with tiny sparkling raindrops. The chow line, the food line, inched forward. Lunch consisted of again, you can use this in your story, two canned sausages, one lob of boiled potato, and one slab of bread. Our family had split up, for the hall was too crowded to sit together. Again, you could have used that in your story. We cheered loudly when the trucks rolled by, disturbing canvas army cots for the young and hardy, and steel cots for the older folks. This is where they get their cots. Cots are the beds. The block monitor came around the first night to tell us that we must all be inside our room by 9 o'clock every night. At 10 o'clock, he rapped the door again, yelling, "Lights out!" and Mother rushed to turn the lights off not a second later. I stared at our little window, unable to sleep. I was glad Mother had put up a makeshift curtain on the window, for I noticed a powerful beam. There's this big lights sweeping across every few seconds, so it's like a prison. The light came from high towers around the camp, where guards with Tommy guns kept a 24-hour vigil. I remember the wire fence encircling us and a knot of anger tightened up in my breast. What was I doing behind a fence like a criminal? If there was accusation to be made, why hadn't I been given a fair trial? Maybe I wasn't considered an American after anymore. My citizenship wasn't real after all. Then what was I? I was certainly not a citizen of Japan, as my parents were. Even father and mother had little ties with their mother country. In the 25 years in America, they had worked and paid their taxes to their adopted government as any other citizen. Of one thing I was sure, the wire fence was real. I no longer had the right to walk out. It was because I had Japanese ancestors. It was also because some people had little faith in the ideas and ideals of democracy. I finally buried my face in my pillow to wipe out burning thoughts and snatch what sleep I could. So this is the experience of one person in the camp. Okay. The next one is I think this is a primary source. Western Defense Command and Fourth Army Wartime Civil Control Administration, Presidio of San Francisco, May 1942. Instructions to all persons of Japanese ancestry. This is a letter given to the people that were sent to the camps, Japanese people. All that portion of King County, state of Washington, with the boundary beginning at a point. So it's talking about where? Tacoma and Seattle, east of Des Moines, which Highway 99 intersects Washington. So anyone that lives in this area, okay? Pursuant to provisions of Civil Exclusion Act, the headquarters dated May. So it's just information. Persons of all Japanese ancestry. Anyone that's Japanese, both alien. So alien in this case means that they're not citizens, and also citizens, will be evacuated from the above area by 12 o'clock Pacific, I think Pacific Western Time. No Japanese person will be permitted to move into or out of the above area after 12 o'clock without obtaining special permission from the representatives commanding the general Northwestern section. Okay, so so this is kind of like just general information. Such permits will only be granted for the purpose of uniting family members or in case of great emergency. The Civil Control Station is equipped to assist Japanese populations affected by the evacuations the following way. Give advice and instruction on the evacuation, so they're being evacuated. Provide service with respect to the management and leasing sales, so anything that they need to get rid of, they can also help. Leasing, sale, storage, or other dispositions, property, real estate, business equipment, household goods, boats, automobiles, and livestock animals. Provide temporary residence elsewhere for all Japanese Americans. So this is what the camps are. Transport, so take them to the camps. The following instructions must be observed. A responsible member of each family, preferably the head of the family, or the person in whose name most of the property is held, and each individual living alone will report to the civic control station to receive further instructions. Evacuees must carry with them or on departure for the assembly the following. So you need to carry this when you go to the camp. Bed linens, no mattresses, toilet articles like toilet paper, extra clothing, essential personal effects for each family member, All items will be securely packaged, tied, and plainly marked with the name of the owner and number in accordance with instructions to obtain the civil control station. The size and number of packages is limited to what each person or family can carry. No pets can be carried, so you could have talked about that in your story. No personal items and no household goods will be shipped to the assembly center. The United States government, through its agencies, will provide for the storage at the sole risk of the owner. So the government says we're gonna store it, but if we lose it, it's not our fault. Each family and individual living alone will be furnished transportation, so you're gonna be transported. So these were the sources. So this is what you need to use to develop your story. So now we're gonna look at some examples, and there's gonna be a lot of information that I'm gonna go over here. You are going to write another narrative, and it will be in the grade book. Again, you will be writing another narrative, and it will be going in the grade book in my Google Classroom, and it will most likely be on the plague. So again, if I read your story and you're like, "Oh my God, seriously," that's okay. No one knows who you are, and it's gonna be fine. But I will go over all the mistakes that I noticed, but I will try to go over all the mistakes, but I will also go over the things that you did well, because there was a lot of great things that we did, but there's some things that we need to really, really work on. Okay, so this is student A. Title. They misspelled title. It's that simple. There is no way to say that nicely. You literally misspelled the word title. Now you don't have to write the word title as a title, right? You don't have to have that in your story. And then when you write a title, your title should be capitalized. Escaping a camp should be capitalized. Coach, as transported to a camp that was filled with other people that also had been put in the bus. The camp was. So just from this, I'm really confused because this needs to be capitalized. When you start a sentence, it needs to be capitalized. Proper nouns must be capitalized. These are very basic things that are not happening. But besides that, I'm really confused by the whole sentence. Coach as transported to a camp that was filled with other people that also had been put in the bus. There should be a period here, I believe. Because this is how it reads. Coach as transported to a camp that was filled with other people that also had been put in the bus. The camp was a big place that had farmers and a lot of farmland. I'm really confused by the whole sentence. I don't know if coach is a person. And then here we have, this should be capitalized. It's very little things that we saw that I'm noticing that are just not getting done. Another thing that I noticed was students don't leave space between the period and the first letter. That's a mistake. You have to have a space between the period and the first letter in the next sentence. But those are like grammatical errors. The bigger issue was that some of the stories I just didn't understand, like this one. So this is misspelled too. When they're getting, I think they mean when they are. So when they are getting closer to the bus, took a turn. People were scared knowingly. So again, there's just so many misspellings here that they were going to put in a place that might never leave until the rules change. This is just a run-on sentence. We're going to put in a place that might never leave until the rules change. There were farmers waving at the bus outside. A lot of people wanted to leave others, except their families. So it's really hard to read this. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who the main character is. This is just it's just a lot of information and it's really disorganized. You can't just write a story and without planning for it. You have to plan your story. Aside of the people who wanted to leave others, accepted their faith, not their faith. When the bus arrived, two guards went inside the bus and stated taking people out the bus. Coach was scared. I hope you guys understand my frustration because I don't know what's going on here. It sounds like Koichi is a Japanese American that's in a bus. And then here, what they did here was they did use some sources about people on the bus, on the outside waiting to the people on the bus, but this could have been done much differently. And then they didn't capitalize this letter. They were brought into their rooms, into their rooms. It was too big. Oh my God, why does it say two here? And maybe they meant two, like two, action number two. It was two. I think they meant TOO. Apart, misspelled, looking complex, misspelled, that had more than a misspelled, misspelled, misspelled. It's like every other word is misspelled. And when I see that, it really impacts the story. Like, you can't read the story. I mean, I can continue reading the story, but there's no point in doing that because it's so confusing. When your story is so confusing like this, we can't continue reading it. So Koich, let me see if I can make sense of this. They were brought into the rooms. It was big. It was two big apartments looking complex that had more at least 200 rooms. So there was a bit. It's a lot of space, and there was also electrical fences. So they're using evidence. Good job. And there's some guards with big Tommy guns. Good. Um, After showing the rooms, they shot him, the kitchen, the place where they would. Come on, guys. After a long working, coach headed to his room with other people that were there. After, and then it says, this, why, what is this? There's a period after eating, period. I don't understand. A monitor will walk around at 9 o'clock and have, and an hour later at 10 he will walk back around yelling lights out. So this person is using evidence, right? I read the sources for you. So there's Tommy guns, there's lights out. So they are using the evidence in their story. But the issue with this story is that it's really disorganized and there's so much misspellings and so many grammar issues that it's almost impossible to read the story. I need to find a way to escape. So it looks like this is going to be the conflict. Koi said to himself. Why is there a period there? And then I'm guessing there's a period here, but there's no capitalization here. Like these are basic things that should not be happening. And the issue is that students are not going back and reading their story and seeing the misspellings. And that's an issue. He went to sleep at as a big light would shine into the small window. So good. Again, this person is using evidence. Big light. There's a big light that looks like it's shining on people, right? We read it in the sources. Um, Very few times the light will make sure people will not escape. The Tommy gun guard were moving the light around all the night. The next day, again, misspellings. Not misspelling, just capitalization. Koich, this needs to be capitalized. The person's name. Headed to the main place for other people that were awake. Again, like that's going to be in your grade. I will give you a grade for how well you use your sources, how well you use narrative strategies like dialogue, and how well you use punctuation. I haven't seen any dialogue here at all, and that's an issue. The fields will be working till 12 p.m. Understood. The fields? I don't understand how the fields understand. The fields is a field. One of the guards yelled, the other guards. So this should be. I'm gonna stop because I'm really frustrated because I don't understand what's going on. Okay, so this if I was grading this on if I was grading this on a scale for sources, this person might get an S. For narrative techniques, this person might get an S minus, and for punctuation and punctuation and capitalization, this person will get an N, like a really hard N, because there are so many mistakes. The S is because they are using evidence from the sources, right? Um, this could be an S minus or N because I haven't seen any dialogue. There's no dialogue. It's just narration that this person is doing. Okay. But the biggest issue with this document is just the amount of misspellings. Just it's I don't understand. Like you can't do this. Okay. Let's look at student B. So the biggest issue with this one is spelling. This student wrote the tag, so they capitalize the title. Good job. It was a lovely afternoon in Japan. Okay, Japan is a proper noun, so that should be capitalized. It was a lovely afternoon in Japan. You can see the pink sunset. Okay, so the sources don't, they do talk about Japan, but the sources talk about life in the United States. So maybe this person is doing some like background information. I don't know. Let's see. It was a lovely afternoon in Japan. Okay, this is a run-on sentence. It was a lovely afternoon in Japan. You could see the pink sunset. So it was a lovely afternoon in Japan, period. You could see the sunset. Joe is a, so here is one thing that I started just from this. It was, so this is past tense. Joe is, this is present tense. So here, I misspelled tense. So here, this person is going back and forth, and you can't do that unless you're like looking back in time. But you need to stay consistent when it comes to the tenses. Joe is, so thank you for capitalizing this and leaving space here. Joe is a 24-year-old guy. Okay, this is a run on again. Joe is a 24-year-old guy. He was, so there should be a period here, and there should be he. He was. So here you do it again. Is, and then you say was. You have to stay consistent. He was just heading home from work and was walking by the beautiful sunset. All of a sudden, they start attacking Japan. Okay, this is not supported by the sources. Japan attacks the United States in Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor is in Hawaii. So from this is a problem already. There's a lot of like, there's one thing, there's issues with tenses, and then there's an issue with capitalization, and there's an issue with sourcing, because none of the sources talk about the United States attacking Japan. Joe was terrified. They started putting stores, home building on fire. What? They started putting store homes, buildings on fire. There should be a period here. Joe ran as fast as he can. Again, can, was. This person is kind of going back and forth, and you can't do that. Joe ran as fast as he can to his home, but he could not find his home. Why? Why can't he find his home? He doesn't know where he lives? There should be a period here. He started to panic. He whispered to himself, "Where's my home? Where's my home?" Joe said slowly. He started saying it louder and louder. "Where's my home?" He, there should be a capital here. He was really frustrated. Misspelling. He started asking people, "Have you seen my family?" I thought he was looking for his home. And then it says Joe. It says, "Have you seen my family?" Joe? He's talking to Joe? Joe was showing a picture he keeps of his family in his wallet. Have you seen them? No, no, no. Okay, that's good. That's good. Oh, but then you can't set, this is a whole different paragraph. Set every stranger as there were looking for theirs too. Spelling. Joe found his path home, but he was trying not to get his hopes up. But he wasn't wrong until he saw, oh my god! His home was practically not there. His walls were destroyed. He had no doors. There was a big hole in his roof. He went inside. OMG. You can't do that. That's not allowed. They don't say OMG back in 1941, 42. Said Joe. Everything was knocked down his shelves. It looked like it has been abandoned. There should be a, his may have been destroyed. But is it destroyed or not? But that's besides the point. This story doesn't work whatsoever because it's not supported by the sources. The sources need to talk about Japanese Americans being taken to the camps, a person being taken to the camps in America. This story does not address that. If I was grading this on narrative techniques, narrative techniques will most likely be an S minus. For sourcing, it'll be an N, and for punctuation, will also most likely be, it'll be an N, S minus or an N. This one is definitely an N. This one has its own issues. Is that it's not supported by the sources. Nothing here, nothing here is supported by the sources. Nothing. Zero. There's nothing. It's like a really, really solid N. There's just no way around that. Okay. Move on to the next one. Student C. So remember, when you are writing your story, you need to have like exposition, rise in action, fall in action, resolution. So here's going to be the conflict somewhere. In the first part, we need to know who the characters are. We need to know the setting. We need to know who the characters are. Then we're going to have a conflict, rise in action, the most interesting part of the story, the exciting part, and then fall in action, resolution. And so far, I haven't seen that in either of these. This one had a conflict that his house was destroyed, but it was not appropriate for the sources. This one I couldn't even read. I just couldn't get through it. Let's look at student C. It is a year 1943, a year after the attack of Pearl Harbor. Bella and John were expecting a baby. They had just become citizens of America, meaning they pay taxes and do other other things Americans do. They even took out a loan and bought a new 2-bedroom home. I really like this because it gives us the time, it gives us the people. Now, one issue that I have with this is that based on the sources, it was only 2 months after the attacks that that the Japanese Americans were put in the camp. This person said a year, so that's the only thing that is not supported by the sources. But I really like how they introduce who these people are. It sounds like they're a young couple, um, and they're expecting a baby, and they are American. They pay taxes, and they bought a new 2-bedroom home. So far so good. This is our new start, Bella exclaimed. Ooh, I like how she says this. She could have said Bella said, but that's boring, right? I like how she indents here. They start unpacking their stuff. They had just moved in. They had just moved from Japan. Now, be careful because if they had just moved from Japan, um, how did they become citizens so fast? Just be careful with that. They had just moved from Japan. Little did they know that how everything would change. Bella and John were unaware of what had happened last year. They didn't know about the relocation notices and their internment camps. So these people or this couple is unaware of what's happening to other Japanese Americans. John was especially excited for his new job. He was so happy that he could now provide for his soon-to-be family of 3. Both Bella and John were half Japanese. They both spoke English very well. There's an issue here um, that I just noticed. Here they say they had just moved from Japan, but then here it says they were both half Japanese. I mean, you can make the argument that maybe his dad and maybe their parents live in Japan, and their parents, one of them is white, the other one's Japanese. But both of them, it's just a little confusing. So I would be careful with that. A week later, 2 strange men came to the door. They were knocking very hard, like they were angry. I like this, right? They were knocking very hard. So it gives you when I read your story, I should be able to visualize what's happening. So right now, I'm kind of visualizing a small home, kind of like in an area that is not very highly populated, and they're sitting in the kitchen maybe, and they hear this knocking on the door. Coming, Bella yells. I like this. She assumes it was just John forgetting his keys. Oh, so it looks like she was at home. I would have elaborated on that more. I would have talked about how John left in the morning, Bella say be home, whatever, right? Forgetting his keys. Are you Mrs. Jackson? The man on the left asked. The man on the right looked small, as if he was new to the job. Now, interesting. If you're half Japanese, I guess you could be Mrs. Jackson, right? Because if your dad is white and your mom is Japanese, um, that could work. The man on the right looks small. Now, what does being small look like have to do with being new in the job, right? You could have described that a little differently. Yes, I am, Bella answered. Answers. Okay. So this is a so this is a present tense. This is a present tense. So because here it says Bella exclaims, not exclaimed. Bella answers, not answered. So good. This person is, for the most part, staying consistent. She placed her hands on her belly. Did you need something? She asked. He asks. Yes, he replies. You and your husband have just moved here, correct? Correct. Is this about our loan? She asked. No, ma'am. This is about the internment camps. The man on the right says. There should be a comma here. Bella looked like she saw a ghost. She didn't know what to say. I like the descriptive language that this person is using. She didn't know what to say. Internment camp for what? What for? She stuttered. I like this. It shows that she's nervous. We'll give you 1 week. Pack all this up and you'll be taken to a camp, the man says. Again, a comma here. Bella called. Bella called. So present tense. Good job. Bella calls John immediately. He was in shock. He didn't know what to do, whether to run or stay. They were already on their radar. What could they do? I'm not sure what they mean by this. I'm guessing they mean the student that wrote this means that the Americans are already that they notice who these people are, the Japanese people are. What could they do? A week goes by, and they are taken to a camp. Everything is so dark and gloomy. They take a bus. So far I've seen some evidence here, but not a lot. I saw some in the beginning where they pay taxes and they're American. But one thing that I would encourage the student is to include more evidence because I haven't seen a lot of it. Maybe it's coming. Everything's so dark and gloomy. They take a bus to go there. So this is evidence. Good. There are many people on the bus. Good. Bella didn't know why there were so many people going to this camp until she took a good look at those people. They were all Japanese. She finally realized that she had done by moving to America. She finally realized what she had done. What had she done? Uh, show us. Like, tell us what do you mean by this? Everyone on the bus was separated into large groups of four, A, B, C, and D. Bella and John were in group D. The couple, so here we don't hear much about John. The couple got placed in a small apartment. Their new home was the size of a living room. Good, this is good evidence. There were weeds and dandelions peeking through the cracks. This is good evidence. This isn't right, John expresses. You're pregnant. So here, should say are, because you're doing present tense. This isn't right, John expresses. You're pregnant, the baby, and they barely gave us notice. Bella looked deflated. Looks deflated. Again, stay consistent. She had no more hope. Before she went to America, her family and friends told her not to go, that it was dangerous. But all she could think about right now were her parents. They had died a couple years back, but she thought about what they say now. So I don't think this is supported by the sources. So again, I know this person is adding a little extra stuff, but it's not supported by the sources, so be careful with that. It's okay, Bella. You'll get through this. I know you can, the voice in her head said. The voice in her head was her mom. It was always her mom. Wherever she did something wrong, she would hear her mom's voice in her head. I don't think she did anything wrong. Maybe she feels she did something wrong. They did the same thing every day. Bella would always wake up first. When she wake up, John. Bella would start her day by sweeping the floor. John would fold their cots and place them on a wall. Good evidence. Then their block leader, good evidence, would knock, spelling, on all the doors. Breakfast is in the mess hall. Good evidence. Good job. Be there by 7, he would say. John and Bella were always early, especially so they could get the food while it was hot. They would get their breakfast and go back to their house. Here, I would suggest this person use actual evidence from the what kind of food they're given, right? Where was the bathroom? You could have talked about that. You could have talked about the barbed wire. You could have talked about the lights, the big shiny lights at night. They would get their breakfast and go back to their houses by 7:45. Luckily, there were many planks of wood. I don't understand why that's necessary. Oh, many people in the camp will grab nails and wood to make furniture. The block leader allowed this. Spelling. So this is evidence. By 2:30, they will get their lunch. They didn't have the best food, but they learned to be grateful for what they had. Here, what you could have told us what kind of food it was. John had brought in more wood. Bella was on the floor, silently reading a book. This was their routine. Um, so you didn't talk about when she packed the book. Okay. This was their routine. They had to have one. John starts working on the chairs. Did the baby kick today? He asked. The baby kicking was also part of the routine. It had kicked every day since they got here. No, not yet, Bella replied. They had dinner at 7:30 and were expected to be in the rooms by 9. It was 9:30. John was setting up the cots. Bella grabbed their blankets and pillows. Their life was hard, but it was all they had. Lights out in 15 minutes, the block leader yelled. This is good evidence. Good job. 9:45, 15 more minutes. 15 more minutes until it's dark, until they do this all over again. It's been 3 years. John, Bella, and their daughter Ava were free. They were released from the place they knew so well, the place where they had their routine. They were finally free. Bella hadn't seen the sky so blue. John had never seen Bella so happy. They could finally live in the life they always wanted, but the life they had dreamed of. Ava grew up with stories. Her mom would tell her all about their life in the camp, and just like her parents, Ava had a routine too. The Liberties Act from 1888 was formed. It acknowledged how unfair Japanese, so this is evidence, good job. Ava was so proud. By now, John were around 60-year-old. Bella had the biggest smile on her face. So this is good. I like this resolution, right? Like it got resolved. Like the issue that I have with this not the issue, but one suggestion that I have with this the story is make it a little more. What's the bigger conflict, right? Like the conflict that you selected was they're in the camp, and that works in this case. But there should be another conflict, right? Maybe she's having like issues with her pregnancy because she's not eating well. That could have been a further conflict that is you make that conflict up, right? But it's part of it's a logical conflict. If I was grading this, I would give it for narrative structure. I'd probably give it an M. For evidence, I'd probably give it an S plus. And punctuation and grammar, there are some little things but not enough to take away from the story. So it'll probably be an M or an S plus. Okay, so this is a good story. I think that they could have actually for the narrative, I'd probably give it for this part, I'd probably give it an S plus because of the conflict issue. But it's a pretty good story, and it's a first like a first draft, right? It's supposed to be a first draft. Um, so yeah, if you follow those directions that I gave, you probably will give an M, get an M. Again, the conflict needs to be a little extra than what you're already given. Now, don't make it that it's such an illogical conflict, and you're gonna see one in a second that it's like that doesn't make any sense. But this one is pretty good. So there's a couple things that could be better, but this is more of what I was looking for. Okay, let's look at student D. So there's no title. And there's also spacing. And I just copy and pasted this based on what I saw. How me and my dad spent our days in the internment camp. Oh, I think this is the title. Bob, who has been living in the internment camp with his father for a couple of weeks now, 4 weeks to be exact. It has been pretty easy for them, but they know it. No, it wouldn't last long. In a few months, they're going to have to do a lot more work than they've been. So this person has one sentence from here to here. And it's really confusing. Bob was Bob, who has been living in an internment camp with his father for a couple of weeks now. There should be a period here, or a comma, or something, because you can't do that for a couple of weeks now, 4 weeks. So just read that, and it doesn't make sense. So it sounds like they're in the camps, and it sounds like it's been pretty easy. The evidence doesn't support that it's easy. It just doesn't. It's not easy. It's hard. You're living in a room that's small, that is not your home. You're using the bathrooms that other people are using. You are eating food that is probably really gross, or it's really gross. You are surrounded by barbed wire. There's people with guns. There's a big light shining on you. How is this easy? It's not. The day in the camp are pretty strict. And then why is this not capitalized? I don't understand how you can see this and not notice that that's not capitalized. You have to fix that. The days in the camp are pretty strict. There was wire fences, so you couldn't leave. So you couldn't leave. There should be a period here in the capital T, because otherwise it'll say like this. There was wire fences, you couldn't leave. There were specific times for eating. It felt like a prison to most people. That's a run-on sentence. You have to separate these sentences. So I like how this person indented here. Bob and his father were not their apartment when they wanted to do some home improvements. Misspelling. They went outside and collected some wood and nails. So this is evidence. Good. On the ground, they got back home and started to make tables and chairs. Oh no, it's fine. Chairs. They were able. Why isn't there a period here? They were able to make one table and one chair with the wood they got. They got to collect more wood to make the last chair for Bob. Bob should be capitalized. They went out again and got some more wood and to make the chair. So I understand that you're using evidence, but you're literally using a whole paragraph about collecting wood and making a chair, and that's not necessary. Bob, they went out again. Who's Bob? I have no idea who Bob is. Oh, here's Bob. This is that main character. When they went again and got some more wood to make chairs and now had to make it smooth, and they got sandpaper and now was making the chairs more smooth. Now they had a table and chair. You literally spent a whole paragraph talking about how they made a chair, and that's not necessary. Imagine if you read a book and books are long. Books are like hundreds of pages long. This is less than 2 pages long. Imagine you read a book that's 2 pages long and a whole paragraph is made. They talk about a chair. It just doesn't make sense. The next morning, it marked the first month. Why isn't there a period here? This should say I've been living here for a month already, said Dad. I've been living? Shouldn't it say we've been living? Now, I've been living here for a whole month already. There should be a period or a comma, quotes. Because here you're saying said that, so that said that too? He said that? Because that's where your quotes are. Yes, we have. So he says I, but it's we. Yes, we have. Who said that? I guess the boy said that? A few days ago. Wait. So, a few days ago. So this, who's saying this story? Or is this past tense, present tense? So this is an issue already. A few days go past. A few days go past. The camp got even more strict. Since there was a wire fence, no one had the right to walk out. They added cameras everywhere. I don't think they had cameras. I don't think they had cameras. This is really feeling like a prison, said Bob. Again, if Bob is saying it, you have to end here. You don't end here. Bob is actually saying this. A few days later, Dad got. Why is this capitalized? A few days later, Dad got sick. Is this a first person perspective or a second person or third person? Because they went from third person, to first person. A few days later, Dad got sick. You see, that's a problem. You have to stay consistent. So tenses are important. You have to stay first person, past tense or present tense. Don't go back and forth. Or, and don't go back and forth between first person and third person. This person went back and forth between first person and third person. A few days later, Dad got sick, so I went to the doctor and asked for some medicine. But the doctor said they were going to go on a lunch break first. We'll be back in 2 hours. So present, I asked them, could you just give me the medicine really quickly right now? My dad is very sick. They ignored me and walked away. I went back to the apartment and saw my dad. He looked like a sick dog. He could barely move. After 2 hours, I went back to the doctor. Doctors were still on lunch break, so I waited for after 8 minutes. The doctors were finally back. Capital I. I asked them for medicine, but they said we wouldn't be able to give you the medicine under your father's name. if he wasn't present to the doctor? Why isn't this dialogue? This is just why isn't this in dialogue instead of narration? I begged them to give me the medicine, but they wouldn't let me. So I had to go back and get my father 20 minutes later. So there's just a lot of run-ons. Um, a few days later, he was feeling better. He asked me to get the medicine, so I did. I went to go find it, but couldn't. I was looking everywhere until I'm just circling some of them because there's so many of them. Like, uh, I found I gave my dad the medicine. He took it. After 2 weeks of medicine, he felt better. He was good to go. When he wasn't sick anymore, we went together to go to lunch for the first time in 2 weeks. They went to lunch, like just to get like what does that mean? What is that? Did they go out? Did they go to a restaurant? Because when you go to lunch, that means you go have a good lunch. I guess to get the lunch that they provide. This is how me and my dad spent our days in the camp for our first month. Was easy until my father got sick. We got things back. So there's a conflict here, and I like it. I think it's a good conflict, but the problem is the narrative techniques. Um, there's just a lot of issues with punctuation. If I was grading this, for punctuation, grammar would be an N. For sources, they do use some of the sources. The issue is the way that they write the narrative. It's really confusing. For sources, I probably give it an S. And structure of the narrative, it'll be an S minus. An S minus because like when people talk, it's really unclear. Um, it's really unclear like what's going on. There's also an issue with there's just a lot of narration and there's not enough dialogue. Um, the bigger issue I have is with this is that they don't stay consistent in terms of past tense or present tense, and they also don't stay consistent when it comes to first person or third person. You cannot go back and forth. You have to stay consistent. If this is from the perspective of the boy, that's fine. You can do that, or you can do third person, but you can't go back and forth because it's really confusing. Student E, another day, another pain. Being trapped in the internment camp is like animals being trapped in a zoo. I mean, why am I even trapped here? So this is first person, right? So when I read this, I'm going to expect first person perspective. There has to be a way out. I can't just live here for 3 years, I thought. I mean, what did I even do? I'm a Japanese American. My mother and father are also here with me at the camp. They just happens to be somewhere. They just happen to be somewhere doing some work at the moment. This is really vague. I would avoid doing that. Misspelling. We used to live on a farm near the west coast, but ever since they took us to this dump, our farm has rotted away. This is good evidence. I always love our farm. It was peaceful. Here they could have talked about why it's rotted away. Like, or you could have talked about how it was bought by someone very cheaply. Always loved our farm. It was peaceful. I love watching our animals play. What animals? I love brushing my tiny hands through their soft fur. I like the how we can visualize that, right? I remember looking out the barbed wire in the camp. This is good evidence. I saw armed guards on the lookout for trouble. Good evidence. I knew I should be loyal to the United States. What's going to happen next? I already lived here for a few years now. Okay. Bella, my mother asked. Time to get dressed. Then get to work. We don't have all day. I like this. This is good. So this person is using both. This person is both using narrative techniques, like he is talking about what's going on, but they also talk about people talking. Our work was to clean things, like a janitor. Some were doctors, like my father. My mother and I were janitors. I remember the last time I ever saw my brother. He tried to escape this camp. I heard he got shot and killed for attempting to escape. Misspelling. The internment camp. He was only 16. It was impossible to escape this place. Many die here from illness or from being too stressed out. I got dressed and went to see what there is to eat. The food here is bad. Sometimes we don't even get food. Our food is too watery or too dry, but it's better to eat than to starve. That's what all the guards be saying. Miss Miss Bell. That's what all the guards. You could say that's what all the guards say when we complain. For breakfast, I got some soup. It tasted like it was not even cooked. It had raw meat with a side of dirty carrots. It was not tasty, but I ate it anyway. I threw my plate away, and when everybody left, I started cleaning the lunchroom. Are you allowed to throw away your plate though? I started cleaning the lunchroom. I thought about all my friends from school. I miss them so much. I wonder how they felt when I suddenly, misspelling, disappeared. I hope they miss me too. The lunchroom always was always a mess. The guards sometimes throw stuff around the room so that we could spend more time cleaning. I like this. But I don't know if there's evidence for that though. Mom, I'm scared, cried a little girl. It's okay, dear. We'll be out in one more year, okay? The mother said while comforting her daughter. I can understand why it might be scary here. The lights never work and there was no warmth here. Most of the children's stuff will be stolen. Their clothes, furnishings, and candles will randomly disappear day by day. Gosh, this place is horrible. Why were the Americans so scared of us? I guess I get it. The Pearl Harbor attack was all us. They see us a danger. So all us means who? Japanese? This person could elaborate a little more on this. Like, I get it. The Japanese attacked the Americans and they think that we're all criminals or we're all gonna do something bad, right? Hey, get back to work, kiddo, a guard yelled in my direction. Oh, sorry, I said, quickly while quickly brooming the floor. Why did I stand there like that? At least they didn't do anything else than yelling at me to get back to work. I wish it would stop yapping and see what we go through every day. They act as if they are busier and harder things to do here. All they do is order us to work and eat food. I broomed the floor in madness. We didn't do anything to deserve this. I'm surprised that the broom didn't break from how hard I was mopping. I like this visual. Next, I got a sponge and dipped it with soapy water. I went to the little window we had and started cleaning it. I wonder what the normal American children are doing right now. I wonder, they are probably going to school, playing with their friends, eating good food, and not having a care in the world. I constantly dipped the sponge in the water. This sponge can barely hold any water. We have to save the water. Water is so valuable here. We mostly reuse the same water. There is no clean water to take a bath, wash your hands, or clean the food. The water system never works. So most days we wouldn't shower. I like this. It's an inference, right? We had to do our business anywhere. There was no toilet or private spots. There was, I think there is they call it a latrine. That's where you go use the bathrooms, or private spots. There was also hardly any glass here. Why do you need glass? Most of it was broken or damaged, so damaged that when you touch it, it will break into a million pieces. Why is that relevant? I don't understand why this is being included here. Sometimes you were misbehaving, the guards would throw pieces of broken glass at you. I don't think that's supported by the evidence. That happened to me once. I never misbehaved again. I went outside the brush to leave away from the trails. I often look at the barbed wires, looking to see if anyone will save us. Once you walk into these gates, the earth's color starts to fade. Only shades of gray remain. I went back to my mother. I like how they describe the location. I think they could have done a better job focusing more on what they noticed, like the barbed wire, the lights, the Tommy guns. Do you think we're working for the day? Do you think we're done working for the day? I asked in a sigh. Oh, are you tired? You could go rest at our apartment, she replied. Should be a comma here. Are you going to come with me? No, dear, I will be finishing spelling up some work, but you go rest. It's important that a kid doesn't get stressed out too much. I went back to our small apartment without saying another word. I could really use some sleep. My father has been working nonstop. There were so many sick people that they needed medical attention. Some had a common cold and some suffered broken arms or legs. I stuffed my face in my pillow. I thought about how life would be if I was just American, not Japanese. But isn't she American? But she is not. She's like a Japanese American. So yeah, my parents have been living here for 24 years now. Why would why are we just going in these prisons like camps? Why are we just not going? Okay, well you could have talked about like, well you kind of understand like the Japanese attacked the Americans, right? I looked out the small window. A few raindrops stained the window. Oh, it's raining. My mother's still out there. Will she be okay? Do I need to tell her it's time to come back and take a rest? Thoughts fill my mind as I worry about the safety of my parents. I go up and went outside to find my mother, still brooming the floor in the cold rain. Mom, I think it's time for you to come back. You wouldn't want to catch a cold. It's okay, I'm going to be fine. You go get your dad and get him back to the apartment. I still have to broom a few leaves away. It only took a few minutes, my mother yelled. I followed my mother's orders and went to my father. Luckily, my father wasn't in the rain soaking up the coldness. Soaking. I think it's spelled. Dad, Mom said to go back in the apartment because it's raining really hard, I told him. How much more is this? This is a huge story. Jesus, this is the longest story I've had here. Hey, better you than me. It's okay, okay. I went to the old hospital to find my mother. She was still out there in the rain, brooming the wet leaves away. I gave her a worried look. My mother smiled back at me, telling me not to worry. I went to our apartment. I wasn't wearing anything to cover myself from the rain, so I was all wet. I tried getting most of the water out of my thick black hair. I liked the visual. I also changed into dry clothes. I tucked myself in bed and closed my chocolate, you misspelled chocolate, brown eyes. I hope my parents come back. Not a while after I was awoken up to some sounds outside, I looked around the room to see my father sleeping in a nearby bed. I didn't spot my mother though. Is she still in the rain, I wonder? I got up and ran the door. I ran to the door. I looked out and didn't see my mother. Where could she have gone? I grabbed my old dusty rain jacket and put it on quickly. I raced outside hoping to see my mother. Mom, are you there? Where are you? Say something, I screamed. There was no sound. It was just me in the rain. I tried looking for her footsteps, but the rain had washed them away. Good. I like this. It was pouring really hard outside. It was really cold, too. I went to find a guard. Where could all the guards be? Do they not stand in the rain? What if someone is escaping right now? I finally spotted a guard walking around in this gloomy weather. Excuse me, I say. Have you seen a woman in a floor dress brooming the ground by any chance? No, get lost, kid. Go back to your apartment and wait for her. I'm sure she's going to be back, the guard said in a harsh tone. Why did he have to be so rude about it? Who will scream to a 13-year-old kid? Oh, that's because he doesn't teach middle school. I ran back to the apartment feeling hopeless. Maybe the guard is right, that she will be back in a few minutes. Well, any second now. I took the jacket off and placed it back on the rack. I went back to my bed and laid. I stared at the roof of the apartment, wondering where my mother is. I fell asleep okay, so I get it. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping. I see my father is gone. I guess he had to go back to work. I got up and with a tired yawn. I went outside to start my daily routine of cleaning. Hopefully they found my mother. I went outside where my mother was, brooming. There were so many puddles of water. It was hard not to step on them. I can see the reflection of me. I haven't seen my face in a long time. I like this visual. I looked dirty and my hair was crazy. I looked like a failed science experiment. How many times did I tell you to get back to work? The guard yelled at me. I think it's a comment. I think. I'm sorry, it won't happen again, I muttered. I started mopping the dried leaves from a pile. I don't know if the guard heard me, but that's okay. I also remember the next week is going to be New Year's. The year is 1988. It's not like I'm going to leave in that year. I could leave in the year 1989. That's when I serve all my 3 years here. I still had to find my mother. This is incorrect. So the camp was open in I believe 1942. So how can you be done in 1989? 1989 is when I think that law is passed, or that thing is passed, where Japanese Americans are given the United States apologizes and gives them $20,000 to the survivors. So this is incorrect. How do you see a woman? So it looks like she lost her. I'm gonna stop here with this one. It looks like she lost her mom. This is a really long story. If I was grading this, I'm not gonna continue reading, but based on what I read, if I was grading this for the structure of the narrative, I'd probably give it an M. They have a pretty good structure of the narrative. For evidence, I'd probably give it an S, because although they did incorporate some evidence into their narrative, there's some things that are missing. Like there's a lot of details that you could have added. And for punctuation and grammar, I probably give it an S plus, because I did see some mistakes. Student F. A day in the life of American, Japanese American. The sun was hitting Amy. The sun was heating Amy as she doodled in her sketchbook, and her father was fast asleep while her mother was reading a newspaper that she had managed to sneak in. Her parents were sharing a bench while she got one to herself. She would have shared the bench with her cat Millie, but the guard said no pets allowed. I'm gonna highlight evidence, okay? Or underline evidence. Actually, I'll highlight it. So that's evidence because she thought of her cat for a while, but then her thoughts were disrupted with a loud burst of giggles and laughing. Ha ha ha, look at its face, said a girl. The adults that sat around them looked at them with a stern look, and a guard shushed them. They still giggled, but more quietly. She quietly peeked behind her and saw a group of kids laughing and surrounding a girl holding a book. They were all girls and boys, about the same age as Amy. She tried to speak to them, but was interrupted by a guard. All right, people, out the bus. So it sounds like this happened in the bus. But nowhere here does it say that, though. It's unclear where this happens. I also have a hard time with like who these people are. So you should have introduced who these people are. Like that's a big thing. You have to introduce where this is happening and who are the characters. And nowhere do I see that. All right, people, out the bus, screamed the guard. A rush of Japanese people quickly rushed out into the muddy ground. One of the guards yells at them. All right, when I call your number and your family member must come up to me. They were calling out many numbers since there were a lot of Japanese and Japanese Americans. After some minutes, our number was called and we went up to the guards and he instructed us to go to the receptionist. This is evidence too. Hello there, said the receptionist. Here's your apartment. He handed my father a piece of paper. This is also evidence. Thank you, responded Amy's dad. They went to their apartment number 16A. All the apartments looked like shacks and big chicken houses, evidence. We came to our apartment, and when they looked, what? We came to our apartment. So here they this is what I was talking about. This is first person, right? Because you say we. But then this is third person perspective because they say they. You see, you can't go back and forth. You can't do that. You can't say we and then they or them, it. You have to stay consistent. Here you could have said something like, we came to our apartment and when we looked inside, right? Not they. That's a problem. You are going, that your grade is going to be impacted by that if you don't stay consistent. We came to our apartment and when they looked inside, it looked like a total mess. There was dirt everywhere, some grass and weeds growing into the cracks. This is evidence, right? Because we read that in the source. We can't live like in a condition like this, exclaimed Mother. Why is Mother capitalized? It's what we have to deal with. Plus, it's a way better than living in other camps, responded Father. Why is Father capitalized? Amy's mother sighed and dragged her bag into the little shack. It was as big as a living room, but it was better than the other camps, her father. This is evidence. I don't understand why this father keeps saying this. Not necessarily true. Come on, help me get rid of the dirt, said her mother. Again, you went back to third person. She brushed some dirt into the small cracks. Amy then had a brilliant idea. She gathered some skinny branches and got a big, long stick. She stuck them together to make a broom. Mom, I made you a broom. Oh, thank you, Amy. I like this. Oh, thank you, Amy. You're so helpful, said Amy's mother. So again, here we go. First person again, right? You went from third person to first person, so you can't do that. We didn't realize that father, why is father capitalized again, was gone until he came back with some wood and his nails in his pockets. This is evidence. After some time, our block instructor came to our door and told us it was lunchtime. Evidence. Amy and her parents waited in the long line for lunch. When they got closer, they saw how disgusting it was. It was some bread, some dried rice, some vegetables. They heard some other complaints about it. They looked around for somewhere to sit, but it seemed like it was all packed. So this is also evidence. We must sit separated, said Amy's dad. Yes, her mother agreed. Let's meet outside afterwards. She went and walked around looking for a place to sit. Again, there you go again. You did first person again. You go from third person to first person. You can't do that. I as I walked, I saw the same group of kids on the bus. I saw the same group of kids I saw on the bus. Wait, here he goes. As I walk, and then she. How does that make sense? You can't do that. You're going from first person to third person again. She stood and thought if she should ask them to sit with them. If I sit, if I sit with them, I can make some friends here. But if I don't, I'll be lonely. I should try to ask. Hi, said Amy. Can I sit with you guys? The girl sitting in the middle looked at her with a look. After a while, she asked, "Aren't you that creep that kept staring at us in the bus?" Well, no. Amy stuttered. I like that. You are, aren't you? Said the girl. We don't sit with creeps like you. Get out. She ran away from the girls and the others. She felt a sadness she was rejected by people she wanted to be friends with. She walked and walked until she saw an empty table filled with one girl. She looked lonely. Amy walked up to her and sat down. They talked and realized they both had the same interests. They quickly became friends and hung out a lot. She felt happy because she had a friend in the camp. If I was grading this on a scale of for evidence is pretty good. There's some things that you could have added. You could have described the camp more. But evidence is pretty good. For punctuation and grammar, I think that there's some little things, not a lot, but you probably will get an S plus. Like you capitalize father, mother, stuff like that. And then for the structure of the narrative, I probably would do an S. Um, because the introduction to this story doesn't we don't really know who these people are, right? You don't talk about why they're here. You don't talk about the attack. You don't talk about how they feel. Like all these things are important, and you have to have those. Um, the conflict here is pretty weak. The conflict is that she wants to, and it's not till the end that we really realize that's the conflict. So the conflict is pretty weak. We're almost done here. We only got a couple more. I know, but you are going to be graded on this, and I hope you guys are understanding what is it that I want. Student G, freedom. The bread tastes like powder in my mouth. Ooh, I like that description. So this is going to be first person. So if I see third person, I'm going to cut it out. The bread tastes like powder in my mouth. I quickly took a gulp of water to wash it down. My eyes flashed with anticipation. That was it. Today was the day we will be free. I glanced across the crowded room to my mother and her tired hands, my father and his drooping eye bags, my little brother and his small bursting with amusement, leaving me with a grin of my own. It was good that at least one of us was happy, but soon would all be. I had faith. So introduction. So I kind of understand what's going on here. It sounds like there's a young person. I think it's a young person. Two parents, a younger brother, and they all seem really tired except the little boy. Rumor has been going around the Supreme Court was finally making a decision about the Japanese Americans in Sherman camps. It was already wrong for us to have been put here for 2 years already, being treated as if we'd done something wrong, as if our race was worthy of this alone. But today they will make it right. They would apologize and grant us freedom. We will be able to live our lives again. Now, from the source actually states that the Supreme Court agreed with the United States. So maybe that'll come up later. But the Supreme Court said these camps are fine. Sabrina, come here, my mother's voice rang from the other side of the smash hall. This would be another thing that would change. Finally being able to eat meals, evidence. Eat meals together. These camps had always been crowded. So much that my family and I were never able to sit face to face at meals, to talk and laugh with each other. A blessing that I took for granted for a long time. Taking my tray in my hands, I got to meet her, nudging past tired bodies and mixes of rough conversations. Everyone was abuzz with the decisions, all of us hoping for the better. Are you? Oh, there you are. My mother's hands came to tuck my hair behind my ears, her brown eyes warm and loving. I like this dialogue. I wanted to introduce you to my friend's daughter. She's the same age as you. I thought you could use some friends. I was sitting alone, drawing in the corner. I stared at the girl my mother's motions to. Slick black hair, upturned lips and a slight haze to her bright eyes. This is Julia. I give her a slight wave. She smiles in return. Her expression is dazed. This is really good dialogue and like narration. I'm about to say something when a loud voice rings out from the large doorway of the mess hall. The commanding general calls the room to a halt. It's time, the long-awaited declaration, our freedom. The Supreme Court has made their decision about the Japanese internment camps. They have decided to overturn the decision to get rid of the camps. This is wrong. This is incorrect. Um, the Supreme Court said that the camps were fine. They didn't. This is completely wrong. They have voted to keep the camps in order to, as a result of need. Oh, never mind. They have decided to overturn the decision to get rid of the camps. Oh, I get it. I guess someone maybe decided that the camps could not be there, but this is right then. That's fine. I take it back. They have voted to keep the camps in order as a result of the need for the public. So this evidence is actually really good. His voice became a diluted wave of sounds, my own thoughts swirling into view, my hands curling at my sides. This isn't right. I must have heard it wrong. Overturn? I lose myself in the flurry of sounds that surround me. Hideous sobs and stunned faces. Confused children gasp from all around. I need to get out of here. As soon as we're dismissed to leave, I rush out of the mess hall. My mind is like wind, swishing and swirling in the depths of my brain. At last I make it to Area A. Closing the door to the small shack I was hesitant to call home. My tears come fast, rushing in fury. My hand subconsciously grabbing my papers and makeshift pencil. One of the only things I had brought from before the camps. This is evidence because you weren't allowed to bring many things. So this evidence is good. I calm myself with each stroke of my brush, each line each and curve, with each inhale and exhale. It's only when I open my eyes do I find what I've been drawing. It was hard to spot at first, surrounded by all of my precious drawings, but it's not long before I spot it. A bird, its arms open, soaring in the sky. If I had color, I would paint it gold. I stopped to stare at my drawings once more. I had drawn my own image of freedom. I think for a moment once more the tears threaten to come again. I think of the guards with guns that monitors evidence. I think of the fence that confines us. I think of our lives that were stripped away from us. I think of my own family and the thousands of other Japanese Americans who were forced to relocate because of crimes they did not commit. This is a really good story. I cannot live confined anymore. I need to be free. I need to leave now. This is a really good story. Based on what I've read, I probably would give this, just based on this, based on what I've read so far, um, this is a really good story. This is probably the best one so far. Um, this person does a really amazing job describing the emotions of the person. They don't say they were sad. Instead, they show us how they're sad, how she runs to her apartment, and how she draws a bird that represents freedom, right? She does a really, really amazing job at describing what these who these people are and how they feel. If I was grading this based on what I read, because I'm not gonna keep reading it because this video is really long already. For narrative techniques, I'd probably give it an M. For evidence, the evidence that I saw was really amazing. I also give it an M, and for a grammar and poetry, I give it an M. So if you think about it, like this is exactly what I want you to do. This is where you need to be. Um, this is really amazing work. I'm really really impressed. You see how there's like dialogue. What should we do? Should we call the hospital? I think we should. There's like it's really really good. You understand what's going on when you read a book and you're like, wow, that's a really good book. It really brings you in. Like, and then there's stories that you're like, I have no idea what's going on because I don't know. There's so many issues. There's I think H, and then that's it. Let's look at this one. I am so annoyed that I have to move away from my house because spelling the government and white people spelling think that I can't be trusted. Spelling should be trusted just because Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and now I was forced to leave my home. Spelling to move into some new place that is probably terrible. So just this paragraph, there's one, two, three, four. There's five spellings, misspellings, or issues with grammar. I don't know what's going on at this moment. I don't know what's going on here. Who these people? I'm guessing it's a Japanese boy. I don't know if it's a girl or a boy, so that's not clear. I don't know where they're located. So let's find out. My mom calls me Hanzo. My mom calls me Hanzo. Do your chore. What? Hanzo, did you do your chores? Why is this a question mark? That's an issue. I reply yes. Why can't you say yes? I replied. Well, come here. Breakfast is ready. There should be a period here. Well, come here. Otherwise, it says, well, come here. Breakfast is ready. Okay, I will down there in a minute. I don't know what this means. That's an issue. So you see how I've already discovered a lot of little issues that become a big issue. So it sounds like Hanzo lives with his mom, and Hanzo has some like chores to do, and breakfast is ready apparently. As I walk to the table, there should be a comma here. I don't know why this is capitalized. As I walk to the table, I think we've been here for a whole week, and this place sucks. Can I just go home? The problem that I see here is that I have no idea where this is taking place until this. It looks like they're in the camp, but I don't know that. I really don't. I don't know that. I guess maybe this one. Okay, that's fair. I guess I'll take it back. Okay, I've been here for a week. This place sucks. Can I just go home? Is this person thinking to themselves? I guess they are. I ate. So I am so annoyed. So I am. It's present tense. But then here they go back to past tense. I ate my misspelled breakfast, and then I decided to go out, and then the Yoshi, the bully, they call him the Yoshi, asked me for my money, but I declined. What money? You don't have any money. You're in the camp. You're not allowed to have money. You don't buy anything. Why would you have money? Asked me for money, but I declined, so he tried to hit me, but then I just beat him. Then I saw some guards carrying a blueprint for more security on the main gates. I don't think they have blueprints, but maybe. So I looked at it and asked, I don't know, then asked the guards the spelling for directions, and then while they didn't notice, I stole the blueprints and left. That doesn't make any sense. There's no way that's logical. You can't go up to a guard and be like, "Hey, where's the bathroom?" and then take their that doesn't make any sense. Like the story doesn't make sense in that sense. I looked at the blueprints in my room, but then, okay, mom said, Hanzo, what are you doing? I replied, just reading. Then I had made a plan to escape and never return. It took several months. I think this person meant months to plan the escape route. How old is this kid? We don't know how old this kid. We don't. Is this an adult? To plan the escape route and how to open the gate. I thought to myself, at 11 o'clock, I will escape. It will be an hour past lights out, so the security will not be lowered. There's this issue that I was talking about. There should be a space after the period, and then with not much happened as a life continued. Spelling, 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 spelling. The plan was simple. I will go. There should be a period, a comma here. I will go through the dining hall because the place has the most places to hide, and also through the public showers because spelling that place is a big. Uh, this is a really rough one. Um, for grammar and punctuation, I give it an N. There's just so many. I can't keep track. There's just so many little misspellings, and it's really frustrating to read something that, like, you spent days doing this, and I've asked you just to read it again, check your spelling, punctuation, grammar. For evidence, there really isn't that much evidence here if you think about it. Like, I read the evidence with you guys, and there's just not a lot that I based on if I'm grading it based on what I just read, there's just not a lot of evidence. All I saw was that there's soldiers or there's like guards. For evidence, this will probably most likely be an S minus. And for structure of the narrative, they do have some structure of a narrative. They have dialogue. I will probably give it an S. Um, but it could probably be an S minus because there's some things in this that just don't make any sense. Like how he steals the plans. And it's just fairly confusing because of the spelling. I know this video is really long. Um, you have to do this video. The goal is to get 75. If you get 74, I will reset it. Like there will not be an alternative to that. I'm not gonna make exceptions. 75, and then after you do that, then I'll give you the narrative to write. This one will go on to T2. For T2, you are doing a narrative for me, and you're gonna also be working on an informational essay in the middle of T2. But the narrative is going to be due um, probably mid at the latest mid-November before the break that you go into for Thanksgiving. And Miss Black and I will be grading it together, and you're gonna be graded on the same thing you're graded on for this one. So narrative techniques, so structure of your narrative. If you have this with the conflict, exposition where we learn about the characters, rise in action. Here's the climax, falling action, and then your resolution. So that's one grade if you follow this, right? The next one's going to be sources and elaboration. How well do you incorporate the sources into your story? And how well do you blend or mix your story with the sources, the information from the sources? And the last one's going to be really, really important. It'll probably be worth the same amount as these. That is just punctuation and grammar. They're all going to be worth 4 points most likely, and you're going to get 4 different grades. This is 4 points, this will be 4 points, and this will be 4 points. And the reason I'm making this on 4 points is because I really want you to really focus on it. It's going to be important that you look at your narrative and be like, yeah, I'm proud of this. I like when I see this, all these misspellings, I don't know how you don't catch these things. Like it doesn't like you have to be able to catch those mistakes. Um, yeah, you'll probably be starting this video on Monday, the 31st. Um, I'll probably give you a week to finish it because it is a really long video. And then once you finish, I'll give you the sources for the narrative that you're going to be doing with me and the one that you're going to be graded on. Best of luck.